So, Michael, of course, today we are reviewing Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, an epic 4-hour movie. And just a couple of days ago, I had the pleasure of watching Oppenheimer.
Yes, that very short movie, Oppenheimer.
Yes, in 70mm IMAX, the way it was intended. And honestly, it was a bunch of people in rooms, so maybe you didn't get the most out of it, but whatever, might as well, considering there's only like 3 cinemas in the UK that can do that, and I was near one of them, so whatever. But obviously, Michael, you mentioned it was very long, Oppenheimer, and indeed, yes, I realised over the last couple of days I've spent 7 hours watching movies, and only 2 movies at that, so yeah.
Yeah, 7 hours watching 2 movies, blimey.
I know.
And 3 of those hours you couldn't even pause to go to the toilet.
No, absolutely not.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are celebrating the 20-year anniversary of the Lord of the Rings film, Return of the King. And of course, we have reviewed the other 2 before now, so there's also the fact that we weren't just going to leave the trilogy uncompleted. So, Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Lord of the Rings, Return of the King?
Yes, certainly, Michael. So, of course, this is its 20-year anniversary, although that comes later in the year. But because, so we reviewed Two Towers this time last year because of the Amazon series.
Yes.
Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, I believe, which released this time last year. So that's why we did Two Towers this time last year. So I thought, why not do Return of the King at the same time?
Yeah, and stupid Amazon. They haven't released the second season that everyone is clamoring for.
Yeah, everyone is clamoring for it. I had to remember that series because I watched it. I watched all the episodes. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I inferred the TV show was bad when I heard it was bad from somebody who I'm confident is not a racist. Because, I was seeing on Twitter everyone saying, oh, it's really, really bad, really, really bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, is it though, or is it just because there's, black people in it?
It's like a 4 out of 10, honestly.
Yeah. Average, I guess.
Yeah, anyway. But The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, it is not a 4 out of 10. It is a 2003 epic fantasy adventure film directed by Peter Jackson. Oh boy, this movie stars Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Liv Tyler, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Cate Blanchett, John Rhys Davies, Bernard Hill, Billy Boyd, Dominic Moynihan, Orlando Bloom, Hugo Weaving, Miranda Otto, David Wyneham, Carl Urban, John Noble, Andy Serkis, Ian Holm, and Sean Bean, or Sean Bean, as he's known. He's not known like that, but anyway, the release date for this, Michael, was the 17th of December 2003, so we are a bit away from its actual 20-year anniversary, but yeah, we're it's the same year, and oh boy, the runtime, 201 minutes. I wish it was that short.
Because there's the extended edition.
Yes, which of course I watch because that's the only better version you can find online.
Yeah. Why did they even bother with the theatrical version?
I know. Michael, can you tell me what the budget was for The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King?
Yes, it was 150 million.
No, only 100. Because we talked about this, they filmed them all at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, economically efficient.
Yeah,
well done there.
Probably made it more efficient. So yeah, only 100 million. For this 4-hour epic with the extended version. But what about the box office? How much did this make?
Well, my instinct is just say around $1 billion. And it might be the case that actually this did way better than $1 billion. I'm embarrassing myself. But I'm going to say this film made 1.2 billion.
You know what? You're fairly close. It's 1,147,000,000. So, people, obviously watched it, got into these movies, and they were, 3 years back to back, 2001, 02, 03, and the hype was building. You think of the Star Wars trilogy or the prequels and the originals, they were separated by 3 years. This was just separated by 1 year, and maybe that benefited it. I don't know, because I
think that's kind of true. I think people can get tired of the long waits. I mean, it can obviously go the other way, where you get films coming out all the time. But I think because it's 3 films over a short period of time,
and again because it is kind of all one story. But that's the thing. What I'm kind of trying to say is, one every year you think maybe the audience would not, the audiences wouldn't come back as enthusiastically, but no, they did, and more so each time. So that just shows you what a incredible run this movie had, and indeed how good it was, perhaps. So, Michael, tell me, did you like Lord of the Rings: Return of the King?
Well, I'm probably going to start off with the least surprising statement, which is that yes, I did like this film. I thought it was very good, a thoroughly entertaining fantasy action adventure film. And I do think it did a good job kind of wrapping up the story. I do have a controversial take, and I'll express that controversial take now. I recently saw a meme. I think you've probably seen it from like one of the kind of prequel X-Men films where Ginger Lady says, "Oh, we all know that the third film is always the worst." Then I happened to see that, and then there was a load of examples shown of cases where that isn't true. This was like the meme format. And some of them I agreed that it wasn't true, but one of the examples given was Return of the King, and I do have a controversial take, and it is this. I do think that this is the worst of the three films. I would say on balance, I think all three films are pretty much equivalent in quality, but I think this one's slightly worse. And the reason why is, I think, because of like pacing towards the end, and I think the problem is it's kind of unavoidable because it's just so much to wrap up. But even though I think it's unavoidable, it's still just one of those things where, like, the pacing at the end is wild in terms of how kind of drawn out it is. And for me, that's my big criticism. And it's simply just an inescapable fact that it's, like, wrapping up this massive trilogy. See, I have these films on DVD, and one of the wildest things about it for me is that you put the second disc in, and the dead men of Dunharrow, the ghosts, attack the ships. So it's not quite right at the end, but, you know, they attack the ships at the start of the... So it's a... You know, because this was like back in the day, 2 DVDs. So basically, it's almost like you're halfway through the film, but it's already starting to wrap up with the like ghosts attacking, and then that just puts in perspective, like, wow, the ending of this film really is kind of drawn out. And I think it's undeniable to me that the film would be slightly more satisfying if you had like the big battle where the ghosts come in and they defeat them, and you know Legolas slides off the elephant's trunk and things like that, and then the film is able to wrap up in like 15 minutes.
You're right in that, yes, it is paced poorly because you have this massive battle that takes place, you know, like 2 hours into the movie, and then you have the Battle of Barad-dûr, you know, at the Black Gate or whatever, and that takes place probably like 20 minutes after the conclusion of
before the conclusion. Oh yeah, sorry, I get you.
Yeah, the conclusion of the Battle of Minas Tirith or Gondor or Perenofit, whatever. So it's like, you know, you've had this massive battle, which is a great battle, but yeah, you don't have a lot of time after. You know, and the thing is, obviously, it's hard to shift things around. It's very hard to shift things around, you know. Yeah. Because that's just how it is in the story.
Yeah. Well, the wild thing is, and I guess maybe you know this, in the books, there's also Saruman doesn't die at the start of, you know, the story. Mm-hmm. Saruman comes back at the end and attacks the Shire. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Tolkien, he needs to sort himself out, because in Tolkien's version, you have, in fact, actually also in the books, the ghosts, they attack a different battle. So, you know, credit to Peter Jackson for condensing it slightly, because in Tolkien's version, it's like the ghosts attack a battle, which then frees up some troops to attack at Minas Tirith, which then frees up the troops to attack at the Black Gate, and then after that they get home and Saruman attacks. So, yeah, credit to Peter Jackson for not drawing it out as much as he could have.
We talked a lot about in the Two Towers how when adapting, Peter Jackson moves stuff around, and I think overall he's clearly done that here, like you said. And yeah, he has made it better because he understands. I think you would.
Yeah, I think he does understand that.
Yeah, I think he understands pacing matters. Of course he does. But that's the thing. If the battle of, you know, the big battle in the middle of the Battle of Gondor, I'll just call it that. If that was like a lot earlier, and then you had more of a gap between that and then the final battle at the Black Gate and Frodo, you know, destroying the ring, then pacing would be better. But there is just little to include in that gap between the conclusion of the Battle of Gondor and, you know, the Battle of the Black Gates.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
I actually had a funny take. I realized, because we just mentioned the Amazon TV show, and when we first mentioned the Amazon TV show, I think both of us thought it was like a Lord of the Rings adaptation. Maybe the Lord of the Rings, if you wanted like a perfectly faithful adaptation, you would want to do it in a TV show, just because you have the fact that these massive sprawling books full of all this dense lore isn't necessarily ideal for like a kind of film format where, you know, you're sat there for 4 hours like, okay, well, and then this is happening, and well,
Well, I'll say this is my favorite of the three movies, and I'll go into why. I know it's not ideal, and I think the other movie, particularly The Two Towers, that is more impressive, and it's, you know, better done, I guess you could say. But just the moments in this movie are so good, and they are executed so well as well by Peter Jackson, and that gives me the most enjoyment.
And, you know, I mean, it does what, to be fair, kind of trilogy should do. That hack George Lucas would have had them fighting teddy bears.
Okay, we'll get into that. So let's just talk about the plot, by the way, first. So continuing the plot of the previous films, Frodo, Sam and Gollum are making their way towards Mount Doom to destroy the ring, unaware of Gollum's true intentions, while Merry, Pippin, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli and the others join forces against Sauron Sauron, not Saruman, Sauron, and his legions in Minas Tirith. The key why it is so good is, look, have been 2 movies that have built up these events and these characters, and the stakes have been built up. Everything's been built up to this movie, which is of course the conclusion, and you are essentially paying off what has been created beforehand. And if you do it in a satisfying way, then you're going to get these great moments in the movie because of what has preceded it. And yeah, then you that makes it my favorite movie just because of that. Yeah, and of course I have to go into, well, basically this movie was acclaimed, Michael, critically, as you can imagine. And yeah, they thought it was a landmark in filmmaking, did the critics, and the fantasy film genre. And yeah, there was so many, there was so much praise for the visual effects, the performances, the action, etc. The costumes, the music, all so good, all combined to make, a masterpiece. And indeed, even the Academy thought so.
Yes.
Because at the 76th Academy Awards, it won all 11 awards for which it was nominated, including Best Picture, the first fantasy film to do so.
Yeah.
And tied Ben-Hur and Titanic as the movie with the most Academy Awards wins. Yes, and of course it became the second film series whose entries had all won Best Visual Effects after the original Star Wars trilogy. So yeah, this was just, it wasn't quite, I think, as culturally impactful as Star Wars, but this was maybe as close as you could get to like Star Wars, like the original trilogy, what that did for like movies or the fantasy genre, I guess, in general. This was close. And look, the fact that it won all 11 awards for which it was nominated for is insane.
Obviously, I've said that for me, I don't think this is my favourite of the 3 films, but I think it kind of makes sense in that, in many ways, these 3 films were kind of like, they're sort of one continuous story. So I think it makes sense that when you kind of give credit to a film, you're going to give credit to the final one, because it's like, well, it's a complete package at that point. This isn't like, there's lots of other trilogies, like, I don't know, you can think of many examples where it's kind of like they could have easily stopped after 1 or 2, and the 3rd film might be kind of incidental. Obviously not true of this, so it's kind of like, in a way, I feel like, and of course then you look at the complete package of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it's definitely like the best fantasy action adventure film ever, best fantasy film, best action, well, maybe not, but best adventure film. So yeah, it makes sense if any film was going to win, it would be the film that is concluding the best trilogy ever made of this genre, and possibly of any genre.
Because that's the thing, like, it's the reason why it's my favourite, is because of the satisfying conclusions, and that is what audiences like the most, and, the Academy aren't that different in that respect, I guess, to, myself or other audience goers who are like, oh yeah, this is so cool when these heroic moments, which we'll talk about, happen. It is interesting that you say, it is just one movie, essentially. It's one story, because Peter Jackson, as we talked about in The Two Towers, worked very hard to make it its own standalone movie. But yeah, you're right. I guess it is just one story. Maybe that's cliche.
Yeah, I'd say it's maybe like you could say he made them like cohesive chapters.
Yeah. Unlike the new Star Wars sequel trilogy.
Yes. Oh my god.
The polar opposite of this, which so that's very funny.
Yeah. I also like, just on such Lord of the Rings and like making it a cohesive story, like how the Ralph Bakshi movie ends with like just the narrator being like, because obviously it ends like after the second film, and the narrator's just like, and so the forces of good defeated the forces of evil, and like basically just ends by being like, and then like, because obviously they knew at that point they weren't going to be making the second film.
In the year 2003, people were going insane over this movie, and I think it has had a good legacy, Lord of the Rings. Like the whole reason Amazon bought the Second Age books, what are they called?
Silmarillion.
Like Lord of the Rings has a legacy, but it's still insane to go back to 2003, or to, in your mind at least, go back to 2003 reading these reviews, because this would have been an incredible event, with the Oscar wins, and it was the second highest grossing movie of all time, by the way, behind Titanic. When it came out. So yeah, just this had so much impact on pop culture, did Lord of the Rings, and yeah, we're going to go into some critical reviews. So Alan Morrison of Empire gave the film a perfect score of 5 stars in his review. He called the film the resounding climax to a landmark in cinema history. Wow, I think it's true, but think of those big words, Michael. The resounding climax to a landmark in cinema history. Again, you're talking like the only thing comparable is like the original Star Wars trilogy. of like, wow, this I guess film series, this fantasy film series had this big an impact. He praised how Peter Jackson kept the momentum of the series rolling on through the traditionally difficult middle part and the weak finale, delivering a climax to the story that's neater and more effective than what Tolkien managed on the printed page. And I think, yes, that is true, even though it's like, you didn't do it as good as you should have, Tolkien, even though it's your story, but for me...
Yeah, well, I definitely agree, like, neater, although, I would say, and I think maybe you were just about to say that, but, like, obviously, at the same time, like, books and movies kind of have different things. Like, in a way, a book doesn't have to have the same pacing as a movie.
Yeah, Tolkien didn't even know what a movie was. No, he did.
Yeah.
Anyway, Morrison also mentioned how fans of the film, who have walked beside these heroes every step of the way on such a long journey, deserve the emotional payoff, as well as the action peaks, and they will be genuinely touched as the final credits roll. Yeah, like it maybe sucks itself off a bit at the end, but you know what? It deserves to. It has done the hard work. I think, again, The Two Towers... I look back at that movie because I listened to our review, and the fact that it was a satisfying movie with all the changes and Peter Jackson adding all the tension, which wasn't needed for this adaptation because you have a lot of cool moments in this in the Return of the King. But yeah, that is the most impressive movie, I think, The Two Towers, for what Jackson did. But watching this is the most satisfying. It's what I compare Return of the King to, Michael. Do you know what it reminds me of? It's like a well constructed goal in a football match. The build up can be more impressive. Some good passing, that's really intricate. But your favourite moment is when the ball hits
it hits the net, yeah.
When the ball hits the back of the net. And that, to me, is what Return of the King is, the ball hitting the back of the net. And that is why it's my favourite. And that is, you remember the score of the goal more than anything. And yeah, that is, I guess, fucking, I don't know, Return of the Kings and the Rohan, the moment when Rohan rides into the battle to defend Gondor. Or, fucking Aragorn, giving that pump-up speech before the Battle of the Black Gate. In his review for The Times, James Christopher praised The Return of the King as everything a fan could wish for and much more, and described it as the greatest film trilogy ever mounted, with some of the most amazing action sequences committed to celluloid. Is that true, Michael? Do you think this is the best trilogy of all time? Because I mentioned the original Star Wars trilogy, and maybe there's some other like non-fantasy trilogy that I'm forgetting, but that is its only competitor, right? But again, the Return of the Jedi was kind of weak. This one just kind of gets better and better. At least that's what I think, anyway.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think Return of the Jedi wasn't. I think Return of the Jedi is actually an example of decidedly like the third one's always worse.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it pretty much has to be. I mean, there's actually, because, for example, like, I'm thinking about, for some reason, what popped into my head, like, the Cornetto trilogy?
Yes.
Of, like, Edgar Wright. And, like, those are all very solid films, but, I don't know, no, they're just not as good. No. And also, it's debatable whether or not it qualifies as a trilogy. So, yeah, I think Star Wars is probably the closest, and even then, it's not that close in terms of, like, I think it's pretty easy to say, well, Star Wars is good. But, The Lord of the Rings is The Lord of the Rings.
Richard Corliss named The Return of the King the best film of the year and described the trilogy as the film event of the millennium, which is quite a bold thing to say.
Yeah, although pretty early into them, like, that's kind of a funny thing to say in 2003. Like, this is the film of the millennium.
Well, everyone was talking about the millennium back then, because it's, new millennium. But yeah, so they had to get that in there. Joe Morgensen from the Wall Street Journal wrote, "Never has a filmmaker aimed higher or achieved more." And I love that, and I think that's true. And I think, again, that is why probably it got so many Oscars, because I think, I guess people in the Academy like the movie, I have to think, but also that is true. There was a sense of, wow, all the work that was put in, like all the little minute detail, like it all works perfectly. It's a masterpiece, but it must have been such a hard undertaking from Peter Jackson to do this. And the heights that they aimed, we're going to create this trilogy from Lord of the Rings, this book that came out like 50 years ago that isn't, I imagine, that popular in the culture, and we're going to spend $300 million on it, and these movies are all going to be very long, and they're going to be obviously with dialogue that you can understand, but sometimes a dialogue which is a bit traditional, I guess would be the word, and obviously high fantasy isn't, I guess, the most popular genre either, and it's not like cool.
And I think, like, at this point there've been like a whole load of pretty, I know it was like a film called like Aragon or something, and like there were a few kind of, which is weird because it's not like Aragon, but like there were a few kind of not very good like fantasy films in the 90s that had made it even worse for this kind of genre.
They fucking went for it. They aimed so high. They put so much effort into this movie, to Jackson and everyone. And they achieved something remarkable. Kind of like the heroes in this trilogy, you know?
Yes, they did, yeah. It's
yes.
a more impressive achievement than destroying the One Ring.
Yeah, no, but there is like a parallel there, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of like the kind of behind the scenes like footage is kind of all over YouTube and like very highly viewed for these trilogies. And I think that does like work with the fact that like the fact they made these films is kind of insane in itself. Yeah,
it's insane.
And it's like
that Frodo destroyed the ring. Insane that Peter Jackson managed to create this trilogy. Yeah, no, that is.
And there's like this one like clip from behind the scenes which is like about Elijah Wood's last day on set and like how Peter Jackson like didn't want to like cool cut because he didn't want it to be over, and then like when it like he cools cut, he just burst into tears. Like that's like on the behind the scenes footage.
Oh wow.
Which is like, and I think that just captures like how much the making of this movie in itself is a story. That like at the end of it, they're like bursting into tears, and it's like almost like reaching the end of making this movie is as emotional as the end of this movie.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, that is why there is such an emotional attachment to this trilogy, you know. And yeah, why I guess I can understand why fans of this trilogy, like diehard fans, wouldn't care about the Amazon series because it's like, well,
yeah,
fuck you, you're not my Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy.
And also, I mean, there's nothing ambitious about that either. Like, that's the thing. Like, they made the Amazon, and I was on the subject of ambition. Actually, I was thinking like, you know, of other films. I was like, well, you know, for example, Infinity War. That was like pretty ambitious to bring together all these things.
Yes.
And you could maybe say the original Avengers, but the thing with that is it's not as impressive because they kind of like slowly built up to it in a way where it's like, you know, like it would almost be like like this film is as if like they made Infinity War as like the first film or something like that, and it worked.
People at Marvel, you know, they would have sat around and they would have, you know, come up with ideas and like, okay, we should do this. It wasn't a risk, you know, taking venture. Like they knew they were going to make a bunch of money. I think the original Avengers, of course, it's nowhere near the heights of this movie, but just the idea to have a Marvel Cinematic Universe in general was a bit of a risk. But yeah, but what they achieved, of course, is nothing close to what Peter Jackson achieved.
And of course, all of this within the context of the fact they filmed all 3 films at the same time. Like, that's how committed they were.
Yeah, I know. It's incredible. And yeah, I think I have two, well, I guess only one real challenger, which is James Cameron's Avatar movies. Which he clearly dedicates a lot of time to, and the audiences responded to it, by the way. And you could honestly say the same about Titanic too. Like James Cameron put in a lot of effort, a lot of time and money into creating, you know, his last 2 movies, literally, or you know, the last 2 Avatar movies in Titanic, and audiences responded. And it goes to show, like, if you care a lot, people will come and see your movie. Like, if you put in more time and dedication and make it better, and therefore make it good, obviously, but put more time and dedication than maybe like the guys, you know, the balance sheets, you know, the accountants at the studios think is worth it. It's like, oh, you shouldn't really care this much about this, you know. But Peter Jackson did, and that is why people responded so much to it, and like James Cameron and Avatar. And I think even you can look at Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer. Like, it's a 3-hour movie about people talking in rooms, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, I'm not being serious there, but the point is, like, people, you know, that's going to pass $900 million at the box office, which is insane when you actually break down what the movie is about. And of course, you know, Christopher Nolan, people are always going to see his movies, but people see his movies because they know they're going to be good movies because he's going to put a lot of effort into it and he's going to care.
Yeah.
And that is why people go see it. So yeah, let's get into this movie, Michael. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
So, the hobbit Smeagol is fishing with his cousin, and they discover the One Ring in the river, and of course, Smeagol, his mind is ensnared by the ring, and he kills his cousin for it. And yes, he then retreats into the Misty Mountains and becomes Gollum. You see, I didn't ever think that this, you know, the start of this movie was necessary. I don't know, because we know why Gollum is obsessed with it, because, you know, we all know about the ring. And I guess the movie starts like this because Peter Jackson wants to remind you this trilogy is all about the ring. You know, even though it's called Return of the King, it's all about the ring. So that's why the movie starts out like this. That's my theory, anyway. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is also that, like, they kind of had weird, I don't know, like prologue type things at the start of both of the other 2 films. Or obviously, I mean, the first one has like a massive prologue explaining like everything, and the second one has like a bit of a weird prologue about like Gandalf fighting the Balrog, which is also arguably kind of unnecessary. But I feel like it was like, well, you know, we got to have it start something. And I guess like also, I've heard somebody say, it was somebody who was reviewing Return of the King in their own YouTubing capacity, and they said like, oh, the reason this is there is because it like drives home Gollum as like a real threat. I don't know to what extent that is true, because obviously you could say in the second film he's kind of adorable.
Yeah.
It's probably not strictly necessary, but it's a kind of intense scene that shows like the power of the ring, so why not? Obviously, one of the other things is that not just the threat. Well, maybe this is kind of actually what you just said, but basically the fact that it shows how kind of evil the ring can make you, and obviously that's relevant in terms of the fact that we see Frodo begin to become kind of evil. I don't know if that's literally what you just said.
Well, no, it's not specifically that, but
okay,
it's the overall, I guess, power of the ring is front and center, which is of course important because that's what this whole story is about. So anyway, Gandalf leads Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and King Theoden of Rohan to Isengard, where they reunite with Merry and Pippin. Gandalf retrieves Saruman's Palantir, but of course in the extended version, Michael, which I watched, we have Saruman betrayed by Wormtongue. Honestly, I think it should have been in because I think it, gives some good context from, the upcoming war. And I think, Saruman, that he was a very important character, you kind of need to see his death.
Yeah.
But it, of course, it was at the end of the book, after they defeated Sauron, that this happened, right? So, maybe Peter Jackson was like, might as well cut it then.
I also think, like, maybe he thought, like, I don't know, possibly at this point he still thought that if he showed it in theaters and, like, a lot of the kind of hardcore fans showed up and, like, right away something is happening that is departing from the book, it might have made them angry. So maybe he was thinking like, okay, no, we can't. This is too much of a like explicit rejection of the content of the book to have this character who in the book is like still alive until the end and actually is like the final antagonist they fight, to have him just be killed right at the beginning. What we'll do is we'll cut it from the theater so we don't have a bunch of angry nerds screaming in the theater like 5 minutes into the film, and instead we'll release it, as a DVD thing once the film has already become established as generally quite good. That's one theory I have that maybe could explain it. Because I think they were quite nerd conscious during like some of the adaptation process, thinking, okay, we can't make the Lord of the Rings fans too angry.
Maybe I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I think they had so much goodwill. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, the one thing against that is this is the third film, so you'd think at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like everyone loves it. Peter Jackson can do no wrong. So anyway, Pippin looks into the Palantir and sees Sauron and the burning tree. Gandalf deduces that the enemy plans to attack Gondor's capital, Minas Tirith. He rides there to warn Gondor's stupid Denethor. So the Palantir subplot is different in the book as well, by the way. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but it shouldn't be obvious that Sauron is going to attack the capital of Gondor, like, obviously. That's what I was thinking. It's like, Gandalf's like, oh my god, he's going to attack Minas Tirith. It's like, well, if he wants to take over Middle-earth, that's probably the first thing he'd do, right?
Yeah, that does make sense. I guess like maybe it just puts into perspective like the time pressure element. Well, like,
okay, that makes sense.
Now.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I guess that, but yeah, obviously I think part of it is just like the narrative reason of like, oh, we got to have like a reason to establish that this is what the threat is, even though, obviously it should have been predictable.
Obviously Merry and Pippin split, and that's very well done. And moments like this, I think that shows us why this trilogy is so good, because you've got these epic action scenes, but like those hobbits, which aren't the most important characters at all. They're at the lower end of the bottom 10. But, they have such a, close friendship that we see in this movie. And, when they split, it's like, this could be the last time they see each other. And it's like, damn, that is a good moment, and just shows, it's not all about the action scenes, Michael. That
and also they've been like the kind of comic relief characters that have been most of like kind of the main group, most shielded from the conflict. So yes. I think like the fact that this like big thing happens to them indicates, and of course this is what happens to them to some extent, that now even they're getting like embroiled in it. Because up until this point, they've just been chilling, really. They haven't had any serious threats. Oh no, okay, they were captured by the Uruk-hai in the second film. But,
yes. Also, Elrond and Arwen, which we have a bit of a subplot. Maybe in the extended version we see it more. But yeah, they're arguing over Arwen's fate, and this is derived from the appendices of the book, but it's extended in the film as Arwen and Elrond's relevance to the story. And obviously, I think since fucking Elrond makes the sword, that means that, Aragorn can be king of Gondor. It should definitely be in the movie, right? That's what my thinking was.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I guess in the film, it's just like, I guess it's just based on his kind of, I don't know, winning the battle. Everyone being like, yeah, that's impressive. Like, let's make him king.
If Elrond just showed up with that sword, it'd be like, wow, that was out of nowhere. So yeah, you need to include a scene with Elrond and Arwen saying, hey, look, we're gonna have a son, so I'm gonna stick with Aragorn. But yeah. Yes. Anyway, Gandalf and Pippin ride to warn Gondor's steward Denethor of war. Pippin swears fealty to Denethor, whose now dead heir Boromir has saved his life. Denethor is not concerned with the war, and Sauron and Mordor, and cares more about Aragorn supplanting him as Gondor's ruler. And of course, Gandalf says he will use his grief as a cloak, which is a nice line. I like that line. But again, you have a great dynamic with Denethor, a really interesting character, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think like the Boromir family, I don't know what their surname is, they love them some like kind of complex villains / heroes. Obviously, Boromir's more kind of a complex hero, Denethor's more of like a complex villain. And I think, obviously it works a lot in terms of the idea that men are kind of like the corruptible kind of variable in a lot of like the fight between good and evil. But yeah, I think he's an interesting person. Like you kind of got that sense in which he's kind of, I guess, sort of mentally unwell. And also I think it is a good way of kind of communicating that Gondor is like a kingdom in decline that has been kind of repeatedly pushed back as they've been invaded again and again by Sauron. And you imagine at that point, they'd probably get some pretty paranoid leaders taking charge. Yeah.
No, I guess you're framing it in the context of like the history of Gondor, which just in this movie, Denethor is a very interesting character, to have. So Pippin triggers the lighting of the beacons, which call for help from Rohan after Gandalf tells him to. Yeah, another wonderful moment. You have this again interesting dynamic with Rohan not getting help from Gondor, and the King Theoden is rightly kind of like, well, they didn't help us, and Gondor, though, it calls for aid, and Aragorn tells him, and everyone's wondering what Theoden's going to say, and then he says, and Rohan will answer. That is a stirring moment, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Like basically, like there is a lot of moments like that, which you kind of already hinted at, where it's just like this is kind of crazy how intense it is, and
the drama.
The drama, like that's it. It's like, oh, this is a moment. Yeah, I like it.
I've watched a lot of Christopher Nolan movies recently, and also Oppenheimer, and like what Nolan does so well is drama, like dramatic moments. That's what he looks for.
Yeah,
and that's he executes them very well in his movies. And Peter Jackson does it with this movie as well, and all the movies, to be honest, but obviously especially this because he has the most opportunity to do so. So in the film, overwhelming grief over the death of Boromir has driven Denethor to despair, and he's given up hopes of defeating Sauron before Gandalf arrives in Minas Tirith. Thus, the muster of Gondor is absent from the film. In the book, he has already ordered the lighting of the beacons before Gandalf's arrival, while he refuses to light them in the film. Like, it's more interesting to have the character of Denethor be like, no, Boromir's dead. I don't want to light the beacons. Let's just, I'm sad that my son's died, so everything's dying.
Yeah.
Gondor's dead.
So I definitely agree, and I think that's pretty uncontroversial. That it's more interesting having that moment of getting, having to call for, aid. Being something that the main characters do. I will say, on the subject of the whole hints he's used the Palantir thing like that, something that I realized with, and this is it's slightly irritated me about the Jackson films, not enough to really bother me, but in the Hobbit films, Thorin, and I don't know if you've seen the Hobbit films, but basically Thorin goes mad, and it's attributed to dragon sickness because the gold is cursed with dragon essence. And I realized that Peter Jackson seems to have this obsession with taking kind of character flaws that in the Tolkien books are come from the people themselves, and instead making them come from magical objects cursing people, which it's a minor thing, it doesn't really bother me, but it's just a bit weird because it's kind of taking something which is, because for me it's more interesting if this is an expression of just Denethor's personality, and having an element of, no, actually it's because he's kind of being driven mad by the Palantir, makes it a little bit less interesting. The same way with Thorin, it's more interesting if he's just a greedy guy and that's a character flaw he has, rather than being oh, the dragon gold is cursed. Minor criticism of Peter Jackson, but it does kind of annoy me in terms of characterization.
Anyway, so Frodo, who carries the ring, and Sam continue their journey towards Mordor, and aware that Gollum, now their guide, plans to betray them and take the ring. The trio witness the Witch King of Angmar, or the Dick King of Gabar, the Witch King of Angmar, Lord of the Nine Nazgul, setting off towards Gondor with his army of orcs. Yeah, I like how the light comes out of Minas Morgul at the same time they're passing it, this trio. And it's good because it connects to the other story, with the Gondor War, it plays it, because they feel so separated. Certainly the last movie and large parts of this movie, they feel separated from the rest of the others, and they could feel disconnected. But the fact that the light, goes up as they're going past, that connects them back to the other storyline with the war in Gondor, and of course Merry and Gandalf see it as well. Wait, is it Pippin? Which one sees it?
Oh crap! I think Merry's the one left. No, Pippin. It's Pippin. Pippin.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I got that wrong. I wrote that wrong. Yeah, it is Pippin. Pippin and Gandalf see it too, so yeah, it's a good idea to do that from Peter Jackson as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And yeah, I think it is actually surprising when you realize how much the characters are separate in this film, that it does kind of still feel like a cohesive thing. And I think part of that is obviously because they're working towards the same goal, but another part of that is that at this point they're kind of all within the same kind of proximity, and having that visual thing where they're both seeing the same thing helps reinforce that.
In the last movie, Two Towers, there was 3 storylines, so they didn't feel as separated because it's like, okay, all these characters are doing their thing. But in this movie, yeah, they really do feel like, because, Merry and Pippin, who are with Treebeard, they join up, of course, and yeah, obviously they separate for a bit, but they then all coalesce at Minas Tirith towards the end of the movie. So yeah, and there's really only one storyline going on apart from Frodo and Sam. So yeah, Frodo and Sam could be a bit left out. But yeah, that it's a good idea. Yeah, a visual key to, or a visual cue, I should say, that reinforces that they're in the same story. That's very good from Peter Jackson. So Gollum conspires to frame Sam for eating food supplies and desiring the ring. Influenced by the growing power of the ring, Frodo is taken in by the deception and orders Sam to go home. And yeah, I think you, again, need this, so when Sam comes back, it is a heroic moment, and yeah, makes sense with the ring corrupting Frodo. What does Sam say? I want to share your load or something. No,
yes.
Share the load. And that triggers Frodo, and yeah, that all works. Is that the same in the book?
Yeah, roughly the thing of like, again, for the record, I haven't read the book like recently enough that I can remember the subtleties of it. But yeah, I think it is true that Frodo is turned against Sam. Although people, and I know this is jumping ahead a tiny bit, but people have pointed out that it's kind of funny the way like he sees the bread on the ground later on, and it's like that like redoubles his sense of like going back up, and like people. I remember seeing someone like make the joke that it's like he sees it and he's like, so I didn't eat that bread.
Yeah. Anyway, Faramir, who was earlier overwhelmed and driven back to Minas Tirith by the Witch King, is gravely wounded in a suicide charge. Believing his son to be dead, Denethor falls into madness. Again, another great dynamic with Faramir and his father.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic relationship that is portrayed. He loves Boromir, does not like Faramir, and Faramir is trying to prove himself. And yeah, Denethor basically is killing him because he's ashamed of him. And yeah, and then you have, of course, them going into the battle, attacking Osgiliath, and you have just Merry singing as well, which I always remember that from when I watched the movie as a kid. I was like, oh yeah, that's one of the most memorable moments I think in the movie.
Because of how gross he is when he eats those tomatoes.
But yeah, I really like that scene. It's a very nice scene,
Yeah, I would agree.
It's tragic, of course, but yeah, it's good. Yes. So
it's poignant.
That is a good word as well. Poignant, yes, and it conjures up emotions, which of course is crucial for enjoying a movie. So King Theoden gathers his army, and Elrond tells Aragorn that Arwen is dying, having refused to leave Middle Earth. But not for another 1,000 years.
Like that's it. From their perspective, like finding out you're going to die in 1,000 years is like finding out you've got terminal cancer.
I know.
Elrond I've got to start knocking off a few things off that bucket list.
I know. Elrond gives Aragorn Arndurl, reforged from the shards of King Eladin's sword, and urges him to commit to claiming Gondor's throne, to which he is the heir. This movie is called Return of the King, and this Aragorn becoming king like storyline, it feels like it should have been built up more in the other 2 movies, like because there's some lines now and again. And this movie, obviously, then to make this movie a standalone movie, I guess it makes sense to big it up in just Return of the King.
Yeah,
that's the title, Return of the King. So
and of course they do the thing which I think they do in every other film, which is someone says the title at one point, and that is good. Where Saruman says, Gandalf is like, something like the place is not yours, or to deny the return of the king.
Yes,
that's the name of the movie.
If the movie's called Return of the King, you want a lot of focus to be on that, and it to outweigh the other movies' focus on it significantly.
Yeah, and I think I am right in saying like the whole like him being conflicted or reluctant to take the throne isn't something that's found in the book. Which again, I think it makes sense with like this film. I think it is probably true that he was like, well, yeah, it's called Return of the King. We've got to have more of a thing, and obviously if you want to have it be exciting, you've got to have some conflict. So yeah. It's kind of like he they have to have it be like, oh, he likes being a ranger and he's not ready to step up to being a king yet.
Yes. So Aragorn travels the path of the dead and pledges to release the ghosts there from their curse should they come to Gondor's aid. And again, I think this is a good scene, but I wish Aragorn had been more uncertain. Yeah, because that's the thing. He is uncertain. He's like, oh, should I be king? But like when he's actually in that, I guess you call it, what like mountains or whatever.
Yeah, a catacomb of sorts.
Yeah, he believes he's the king of Gondor, and he's very confident. But if he wasn't confident until the very end, like just before his sword strikes the ghost sword, that would be, I think, more impactful. And
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, a better moment, which of course Peter Jackson loves doing. That's just one little improvement, perhaps. If he was like, don't know if I should be here. Like, what if this fails, And he's like unsure, and Gimli's like, no, you'll be fine. And Legolas says something cool because that's what he does.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just thought that'd be a better moment. Of course, it's still a very good moment.
I can agree with you there.
Yeah. So the Battle of Gondor now, Michael, or what do you call it again?
Pelennor Field. Although technically it's only called Pelennor Field after the Rohirrim show up.
Okay, what's it before?
Before then, I think it's just called the Siege of Minas Tirith.
The Siege of... Is it Minas Tirith or Minas Tirith?
You know what? It probably is Minas Tirith, and I probably only say it minus because, years ago when I read it for the first time in a book. But yeah.
Okay.
I think you're right, actually, it is Minas.
The Siege of Minas Tirith, whatever it's called. Gandalf marshals the defenders, but a huge orc army breaks into the city. Yeah, this is the orc army. It's great with that. They're tossing the rocks and the catapults.
The prisoners.
Yes, and then Gondor are firing back, and the orcs can't move. It's just so some great stuff there. And Denethor attempts to burn himself and Faramir on a pyre or pyre, however you pronounce that. But Pippin.
Pyre.
Okay, good. Pippin alerts Gandalf and they rescue Faramir. Denethor, set ablaze and in agony, jumps to his death. Just a series of really entertaining scenes. So much drama, so much great action. Like, this battle is great, and what a great start. And you have this incredible battle, and in the middle of it, like Denethor on fire, just jumping off this fucking cliff into the battle. And obviously it's totally earned. You can imagine him doing something like that. Just the drama, Michael. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's kind of crazy. You got this going on while the city is being besieged. Like, while the city is being besieged, you got this crazy steward who's like trying to just kill everyone. Oh, and of course, there's also the line he has where he's like, "Abandon your posts." He's just really disruptive.
So yeah, great acting, great performance. It's a really interesting character, and of course, his death is so good. And it's such a weird death, and you might, if you haven't watched the movie up until then, you'd be like, well, isn't that a bit like far? Doing something like that. But no, I can totally imagine him doing that. So yeah. Great stuff. So Theoden arrives and leads his army against the orcs. Yes, and I think this may be the best moment in the trilogy because Gondor they are unsure that Rohan would answer their call for aid. I think I asked you in the Two Towers, what is the best moment in the trilogy? This was my pick. What was your pick again?
I can't remember.
Well, tell me, what do you think it is?
I don't know. See, you know what I really like, but this probably wouldn't be my best moment in the trilogy. I just like it when Gandalf says like when the orcs first come in through. Sorry, the trolls come in through the city gate at Minas Tirith, and they just like smash people. But in terms of like great moments, I mean, honestly, I am actually inclined to agree that charge at Pelennor Fields is a massive one. The only other one which I think was also kind of cool was the final charge at the end of the Siege of Helm's Deep when they kind of charge out of... So it's like, I mean, I think horse charges, cavalry charges are very good, like, in terms of like just epic drama.
Yes.
But yeah, to be honest, I think maybe if I thought about it a little bit more, but no, thinking about now, like, that is a very great moment.
Helm's Deep in the Two Towers when he says "ride out with me,"
Yeah.
And that of course I don't. It feels weird calling it artificial because of course it's all artificial, but it feels more that moment like it's like, oh yeah, we're just going to do something because it's going to be a stirring moment. But but this, when Rohan show up to help Gondor, that feels like it's a stirring moment, but it's naturally done. It's not we're going to do this because we're Rohan and we're proud. It's like, no, we're doing this to help Gondor, and we're doing this to help Middle Earth and men. And it just happened, it's inspiring because of that reason. Because it's just inspiring on its own. They're not trying to make a point or whatever. And yeah, obviously the fact that it's Rohan, who obviously they're not as I guess noble as Gondor. Maybe obviously their kingdom is not as fancy. And they're just they still like horses. Who rides around on horses, or who does battle with horses? Like, come on, that's so, I don't know, like,
it's kind of like, I mean, it's also associated with being kind of like nomadic, like,
yes,
obviously,
that's
like, yeah,
yes. And Gondor have got all these fancy armor, to defend them, like, much better than Rohan.
Yeah. And I think like infantry tends to require more discipline, whereas like obviously with cavalry it's just like
yes.
So,
Yeah, exactly. And it's like these guys who are kind of underrated. I don't think Sauron maybe thought that Rohan would have a big say in the battle for Middle Earth, but no, they're showing up, and the orcs are getting absolutely destroyed by them. You know?
Yeah, like the way they just get swept away.
Fucking great stuff. And of course, after, like I said before, Gondor wasn't sure they'd even show up. And, Theoden was like, oh, should I do it? Yes, I am. I'm going to do the heroic thing. And obviously you have Merry and Éowyn, who are together, both two people who are underestimated, showing their strengths in this battle, which, of course, that's a very nice storyline as well. So many nice storylines here, some great moments. And I like, obviously, when Éowyn picks up Merry and says, you can ride with me or something. What does he say? Yes, milady, or whatever.
Yes. He looks really into it.
Yeah, again, that's another great moment. How many great moments are there? There's too many to count. So, despite initial success against orcs in the ensuing battle, they are decimated by the Oliphant Radig Haradrim, however you say that, Haradrim. Yeah. So fun with the Oliphants. I love the Oliphants. They're great.
Like the way they just like smash. Like I think I remember hearing someone say like derisively of, I don't know, I think it was like a Star Wars film, so now like, oh, these people just saying like lots of people dying is drama. And they kind of said it in like that silly way. And I think like with this, it's like the scale of just like people getting wiped out is like crazy, but it's in a way that does feel like kind of earned.
It is earned because you've been with the Rohan riders for and so long. The previous movie as well and this movie, and like they've only battled orcs now. They're battling this incredible foe that they've never seen these things before. And Theoden's shouting like, bring it down," because he knows how important it is. To bring them down. It's just like very dramatic and completely earned, like you said. And then of course the Witch King mortally wounds Theoden. However, Éowyn slays the Witch King with Merry's help. Again, it's so many great moments. How about this moment, Michael? Éowyn sticks her sword into the Witch King's helmet and shouts, I am no man. Yeah, that would be woke today, would it not?
It would be. I can't believe they made the movie political, dude.
I know. That's the thing. I often think with these action moments, or I guess action movies that have female heroines, and and this one, of course, specifically calls out the fact that she is not a man; she is a woman, and that's what allows her to kill the Witch King. And of course, this Witch King is built up to be a big threat. And how could a woman kill the Witch King who has no formal combat training?
Yeah,
how could that happen?
What a Mary Sue!
I know, but it's such a great moment, and nobody complained about that because this was before it became. I guess people could make money off of it.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna be very generous to the online losers for a second to say. I think also part of it at the same time is like that. I think there are a lot more movies today that are like bad and lazy, and because of that, people notice the kind of quote unquote woke moments more. And like I maybe think, for example, that part of it is for example, you've got like a crappy kind of Marvel movie or like Disney remake that's like rubbish and uninspired and not interesting, and then it also has a line in it where like Snow White says, I don't need a prince to save me, then people are in general going to dislike that movie, and like lots of people who are weirdly political are then going to be like, oh, it's because like she's woke. Whereas with this film, because it's good, then there's like no reason to complain about it. But I also
you're just saying they can't complain about it because it's a good movie.
Yes, that's basically
they can't say. They can't say wokeness ruined the movie because the movie's still really good.
That's it, yeah.
Okay, I guess so. Anyway, Theoden, of course, dies at his niece's arms, and Éowyn's presence on the battlefield is unknown to the reader until she takes off her helmet in the book, but in the film the audience is aware, and I guess that makes sense, right? That works.
Yeah, also, like, I think obviously in the book it's easier to leave things ambiguous, because, you can just say, the maiden rode out, blah, 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 whereas in the film you actually have to show her.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Oh, yes, this man, it looks suspiciously like Éowyn with long blonde hair. Huh. I wonder if that is Éowyn, or just a random Rohan rider. Anyway, Aragorn then arrives with his army of the dead, who overcome Sauron's forces. Their oath is fulfilled, and the dead are released from their curse. Yeah, the dead are very OP, the army of the dead.
Yes.
But I think in general the battle is the best part of the trilogy, but it does kind of end with a whimper. Just these undefeatable, Army of the Dead
Yeah.
soldiers just coming in and, destroying the Oliphants. I think it's great in general. There's so much good action. Like Legolas and Gimli, when Legolas takes down that
still only
Oliphant.
counts as one.
It only counts as one, but when Legolas takes down that Oliphant, that's the thing. You don't want your movie to be just that, but you can have some cool moments like that with Legolas showing off his skill, and obviously Rohan coming in. Denethor, just a masterpiece. This battle of an action set piece. It's just so good. I love it so much.
Yes, yeah, I would tend to agree that they really did a good job. They outdid themselves. I would agree. But again, I think it's one of those situations where it only works because of the fact they laid the groundwork. Because otherwise, it would just be too much.
Absolutely. Well, like I said before, they did the hard work. Now it's time to pay it off, and if you can execute it well, just like in football, Michael, you've got the ball near the penalty spot. A well-worked move, and the ball has found your feet. And all you need to do is slot it in the back of the net. Just slot it in the corner. Everyone will celebrate, and that's what this movie does. The Dead Men, by the way, Michael, they have a Celtic influence. Did you know that?
Oh, well, they live in the hills, just like the Welsh do.
Well, their underground city is influenced by Petra. Did you know that?
Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And the Haradrim were highly influenced by African culture until Philippa Boyens expressed concern over the possibility of offensiveness.
Woke.
Yes. Tolkien being offensive there. Oh yeah, these Africans riding elephants are the bad guys. Yes.
Well, yeah, definitely. Tolkien's literal whole thing is that because the other people are the bad guys are called the Easterlings, and their whole thing is they're from East Asia. So basically, you basically have the Europeans taking their stand against the Dark Lord, who's got the Africans and the Asians on his side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we all know what Tolkien was like. The finished characters instead bear influence from Kiribati, which I think is in the Pacific.
I've also, by the way, and no one can fault you for this, I'm pretty sure it's actually pronounced Kiribati. For no reason. Not know that. But yeah, okay. I'm 99% sure it's pronounced Kiribati.
No, that's interesting. And in terms of weaving armor from bamboo, and the Aztecs in use of jewelry. The bamboo was from Kiribati, and the jewelry was because the Aztecs. So yeah, it's not that these aren't Africans coming to kill all the white men. And just destroy white culture, white European culture, of course. So Gollum then tricks Frodo into venturing into the lair of a giant spider, Shelob. Frodo narrowly escapes and confronts Gollum, who falls down a chasm after a scuffle. Shelob discovers, paralyzes, and binds Frodo, but is wounded and driven away by a returning Sam, who, mourning Frodo's apparent death, takes the ring. So Shelob, I love this creature, very menacing. I love when it appears. Because you remember when it appears, of course, you can see it in the background, but obviously your eyes aren't focused on that, because the spider's dark, the rest of the background is dark. But then, it moves its eyes, and you can see Frodo, he's doing something, and then behind him there's the spider. A great introduction to Shelob, obviously, with Sam returning for another great heroic moment. Get what does he say? Get away from him.
Yeah, get away from her, you bitch. He said, no, he didn't say that. I agree. I think it's nice to have just your classic big monsters, and I think always just having a regular thing be giant is a great way to go. And yeah, giant spider,
especially a spider.
Yes, that's it. If you want to just have it's kind of interesting though, because it's not. I wouldn't say it comes across as horrific or scary, which is of course fine because the film's not trying to be. I'd say it's more just intense and actiony, and suspenseful, I guess. Especially when it's being kind of stalked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it is just naturally scary because spiders are, even though they're tiny, well, unless you live in Australia or somewhere, but spiders in general, they are, they're small, but they are scary because they're creepy. Yeah. I guess that's the thing. You have this inherently creepy thing, and now it's fucking massive.
Yeah. Also, every of the three major Tolkien books, The Silmarillion, The Hobbit, and Lord of the Rings, all of them feature a giant spider as an antagonist at some point.
Yeah, so, Tolkien must not have liked spiders.
That's it, yeah. He knew what was what.
Well, because they're creepy. Imagine this creepy thing, which it's so creepy and scary when it's tiny. Imagine if it's massive. Oh my god, that would be just the worst. So yeah, maybe that's his thinking. So that makes sense. But Shelob was designed in 1999 with the body based on a tunnel web spider, and it was selected by Peter Jackson's children from One of Many Sculpts. Jackson himself took great joy in planning the sequence, being an arachnophobe himself.
Oh wow.
So yeah, there you go.
It's like a Batman thing. He's scared of it, so it becomes his obsession.
Yeah, well, naturally, if you know what scares you, like the spider, you know how to make it as scary as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that works definitely. So anyway, Aragorn decides to march on Mordor to distract Sauron from Frodo, who is now extremely weak. And obviously Sam is with him, and all of Sauron's remaining forces march to meet Aragorn's diversion, allowing the hobbits to reach Mount Doom. Sauron falls for it because Aragorn taunts him, Michael. Is that it? I don't know. Why does Sauron fall for it?
Yeah,
tell
so
me.
basically I think it's like a whole ego thing. He's not above ego, and
Okay.
therefore it's kind of like, because obviously Isildur was the person who defeated him originally, so it's like, oh no, now his son's challenging me, oh, he's gonna get it.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's the thing when you have a villain which is just kind of like just the embodiment of pure evil who doesn't have a character. And there is something inherently scary in that, but like it feels weird that he like can get taunted like he's like a person, you know. Rather than just this person, this thing who's just focused on winning power. But yeah, whatever. So there are changes in the Battle of the Black Gate. Merry is not present there in the book. Pippin does not kill a troll as he does in the novel. Instead, Aragorn fights one. The Eagles fight and defeat some of the Nazgul, and Aragorn kills the mouth of Sauron in the extended edition of the film, but not in the book. That's interesting that when Aragorn kills the mouth of Sauron, it's not in the theatrical cut, because that is a great moment when he's taunting them about Frodo being dead. It has to be in the theatrical cut, obviously, because it sets up the whole Aragorn speech. So why would Peter Jackson just not include like Aragorn chopping his head off?
No, that's and I remember, because I think at one point I guess it was on TV and they were doing the theatrical cut, and I remember seeing them like walk up to the gate and then they just walk away. It's very weird.
So the mouth of Sauron isn't even in the theatrical
Yeah.
cut?
The mouth of Sauron, you do not see him at all. They walk up to the gate. I think like you know how like before the mouth of Sauron comes out, Gimli's like, oh, is he not going to talk? I don't know why I'm giving him that voice. Like, oh, is he not going to talk to us? And then the mouth of Sauron comes out and they do talk. I'm pretty sure in the theatrical version, he says, oh, he's not going to talk to us? And then they walk away, which is weird, and I don't know why they did that.
So when Aragorn says for Frodo in the theatrical cut, the audience is unaware that Aragorn...
That they believe that Frodo has been injured. Or hurt.
Yes, or is in danger, or, they're just saying for Frodo, which again, of course, works somewhat, but like the setup is so crucial.
Yes.
And of course, we are reviewing the extended version, so that's not going to count against our rating. But just in general, like, that's a bad mistake from Peter Jackson, because it's like a minute. It's like 1 minute, and then the stakes are raised for the battle. For Frodo, it's more emotional. Like the hobbits are charging in front of the into battle in front of the rest of the army because of Frodo, because they want to avenge Frodo.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting? Like, so in the Hobbit trilogy, apparently, like, it gets even worse, where like it almost becomes a situation where it seems like Peter Jackson is intentionally leaving out some of the most important stuff from the theatrical cut so that people have to buy the extended version. And obviously lots of people have criticisms of the Hobbit trilogy, and that was like one of them. It seemed kind of cynical, and it almost seems like maybe it was like, because with Return of the King there were like several moments where you'd be like, surely that's like an important thing, and it's cut. And
no, but that's the thing. I can, like, Saruman, like the killing of Saruman, that whole thing at Isengard, I can see why it was cut, because it's like a long scene, and the movie can work without it. But this was just 1 minute, and it really sets up the climax of the movie, the final battle, the charge and stuff. Like, it's crazy that was cut to me, crazy. But anyway, Aragorn obviously gives a great pump up speech, which is kind of undercut if he hasn't been told Frodo is dead by the mouth of Sauron. But whatever. Today is not that day, It's an inspiring speech. I don't know if that's in the book. I doubt it. It is.
Yeah, it's probably like a different version of it where it's all Shakespearean. I will say that there's a very funny video. It was posted to the Cringe subreddit many, many moons ago, and it was a kid who I guess was doing his finals exam at university, and he decided to stand up in front of the whole class and deliver that speech as like motivation. But nobody in the class like reacts at all, and it's very cringy and hilarious. And I don't know, I might have to send it to you after this because it's very funny.
Okay, well, yeah, please do. Anyway, Sam carries Frodo, of course, because he can't carry the ring, but he can carry Frodo. Yeah,
he should carry the ring. By the way, like the film would be much simpler if he just, because he hasn't got any attachment to it at all. He could just throw it in there.
Yeah, I know. That's the whole thing. Why isn't somebody who isn't a better person can carry the ring? Well, whatever.
Yeah.
I will allow it, that line, even though it is corny, because the movie has earned it. And
Yes.
yeah, I do like to talk about the Shire and the strawberries and the
Oh,
cream,
yeah.
because that's the thing right there. The Shire, it seems so far away because it literally is so far away. Remember we were in the Shire back in the Fellowship of the Ring. How many
Yeah.
hours have passed? How many it's been so long, and so that works for the audience so well as well when Frodo and Sam are talking about it. So yeah, that's a great idea from Jackson to include that there, and yeah, or whoever it was whose idea it was. But yeah, just Frodo just hearing it. I'm not sure if we're meant to interpret this, but Frodo's when he's hearing it, he's just like, oh yeah, that's nice, but he doesn't expect to ever get back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what I feel like. But yeah, it's just that's a very emotionally impactful line, even though it's just very simple. But that's great. And Gollum, who survived his earlier fall, attacks them, but Frodo manages to enter the mountain. He succumbs to the ring's power within it and puts it on his finger. Again, great epic music playing in the background, which again is earned because it is a kind of an epic moment. He's been trying to avoid it, and then right at the last minute he can't do it, which maybe you say, oh, of course, but that's the fucking movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, Frodo clings to it with one hand, but obviously Gollum bites off his finger. But I don't know. Do you think it is over dramatic or not? Because that's just what I was wondering.
I think I guess it's. I think it's okay. I think it's an appropriate amount of dramatic for me.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. No. I think it is. I was just wondering because with the music and everything. But no, I think I agree with you. Frodo clings to it with one hand as remorse and guilt flood his mind in the wake of his succumbing to the ring. When Sam's unwavering faith and belief in his friend convinces him to make one final reach for Sam's hand, saving Frodo's life. That's from Wikipedia, by the way.
Oh.
So that's how they interpreted that. If Sam wasn't such a good friend, Frodo would never have. Frodo would have just fallen into the fiery pit like Gollum. So there you go.
He would have.
Yeah, Gollum falls and dies. The ring which fell with him disintegrates. Gollum, of course, when he falls into the lava, that was rewritten for the film. As the writers felt, Gollum, he slips apparently in the book. That was anticlimactic, they thought, which I can agree with. I guess it's thematically it makes more sense because it's like, oh yeah, he slips because he was too focused on the ring and that killed him. But whatever.
Yeah.
Originally, an even greater deviation was planned. Frodo would push Gollum over the ledge and destroy him and the ring, but the team realised that would make it look as if Frodo was murdering Gollum.
Yes.
Instead, they have Frodo and Gollum struggle for the ring. So yeah, good change there, right, Michael?
Yeah, I'm fine with that, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So Barad-dûr crumbles and the eye of Sauron explodes. Again, some great moments here at the end, as you would expect, when the enemy is defeated and the evil is wiped out. And it destroys the Dark Lord once and for all. Yes, all this time, like 9 hours of build-up, and you finally get that moment. Over 9 hours actually, like 10.5 hours, honestly. But yeah, again, it's a great moment, and obviously Aragorn is victorious, and the lands of Mordor collapse into earth, and Mount Doom erupts, with Frodo and Sam narrowly escaping the lava. Yeah, I don't know if that happens in the book, but I like it. I like how everything collapses around them.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't make sense, I like it because it's high fantasy. We've been doing this for 10.5 hours.
Like I think it makes sense they'd survive it.
Gandalf rescues the hobbits with the help of the Eagles, and could he have done that from the start, Michael? Could the Eagles have just dropped the ring into Mordor?
So I think that there is a very good response to this, which is that the whole plan was that like Frodo and the hobbits were so small that Sauron, being like a big guy, could only conceive of like some kind of massive power or like some kind of like brute force attempt to defeat him, and that therefore if they'd gone for the eagles straight on, Sauron would have been like, okay, I know what they're doing, they're sending big scary eagles, so I'll put all of my effort into attacking them. And so I think like that's the obvious defense, that like the strategy with the Hobbit thing, the main benefit of it is stealth, and if with the eagles you don't get stealth. I think it is a bit weird though, because they have the eagles fight the winged beasts that the Nazgul ride, which implies the eagles could have held their own. So I don't know, but like the obvious explanation against that kind of nitpick would be, well, no, because they went for stealth and stealth worked, and if they instead said, no, we're going to send in the eagles, like a full frontal assault, Sauron would have known about it and he would have prepared, and I don't know. I think that does make sense as a credible explanation.
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up very well. Yeah, I think it's not just a nitpick, even though I may have said so in the past. I get it now, Michael. I get it. So, let's talk about the ending. So, the Fellowship is reunited in Minas Tirith. Aragorn is crowned king of Gondor. I said the ending, the many endings.
Yes.
Aragorn is crowned king of Gondor and marries Arwen. And of course, you have so many great moments, so many rewatchable moments. You'd have to list them all out. Well, you don't have to, but if you wanted to, it'd be very long. When of course he walks up to the hobbits and he says, and they bow to him, and then he says, "You bow to no one," and everyone at the wedding, or it's the coronation, right? That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Everyone bows to the hobbits. It's just a wonderful moment. Just fucking Peter Jackson knows how to create a great moment. He knows how to do it. A dramatic, emotional moment, which just perfect, because that did not need to be in there. And somebody had the idea to put that in, like Aragorn saying that line and everyone bowing to them. These four little hobbits, just fucking perfect, immaculate.
Yes, and again, thematically kind of works for the whole thing of the hobbits being small. I guess it's all about almost elevating humility in a way in this film. Like the hobbits aren't they're kind of humble, but they get they get recognition.
Yeah, well, the unlikely heroes.
Yes.
Nobody would have thought Aragorn is the hero that everybody thought would save Middle-earth, but it was actually these hobbits which were absolutely crucial, and they were the ones who defeated the enemy, well, particularly Frodo and Sam, obviously. Anyway, so the hobbits return to the Shire, where Sam marries Rosie Cotton. 4 years later, Frodo, whose wounds inflicted by the Witch King refuses to heal, and suffering from trauma departs Middle-earth. That happens in the book, by the way.
Yes.
Just to clear that up, but that doesn't happen, of course, in the movie. He just leaves for the Undying Lands because he wants to, I guess.
So I've heard what I've heard is that this film and I think it's hard not to see it as having this. It has a very bittersweet ending where it's basically it's almost weird because it almost feels like it's about PTSD, and it almost feels weirdly subversive because of course you could point out that somebody who actually goes through all these adventures could be kind of traumatized mentally by it, and that seems to be what's kind of they're going for with Frodo, that he's had this burden, this horrible experience for such a long time, that he's basically just he's never really going to be able to go back to kind of his normal quiet life again, and his only hope is to kind of depart away with these other ring bearers, which is so the reason why the specific people who go at that point is because they all have magical rings. So Gandalf and Elrond and Frodo and Bilbo have all been ring bearers, so that's why they all go. But yeah, it's kind of a bit of a downer ending, and it implies basically, hey, if you've once you meddle with this kind of dark magic, you can't really go back to a normal life just hanging out in the Shire again.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny just imagining a peaceful Shire, and first Frodo wakes up screaming.
They do the fireworks displays, and he's just freaking having a panic attack.
Yeah, Frodo's a Vietnam vet. Yeah. Anyway, Sam returns to the Shire, by the way, where he embraces Rosie and their children. Which is a very nice ending, but the sixth ending to the movie. And although the film runs for approximately 20 minutes after the climactic downfall of Barad-dûr, many following events from the book are omitted and altered in the film. That's the thing, people complain about the endings, and I saw one reviewer say it would have been a perfect movie if there had been 10 endings, but there were so many endings in the actual book, as we've talked about. Aragorn's coronation takes place in the form of a great ceremony at the citadel of Minas Tirith, opposed to the book, where Aragorn is crowned in his tent on the Pelennor fields before entering the city. Omitted entirely are the camp at the field of Cormellan, Aragorn's business in Minas Tirith, Aragorn and Arwen's wedding, Galadriel and Celeborn being present at the ceremonies and their subsequent travelling along with the company, Theoden's funeral at Edoras, and the complete journey back to the Shire with stops at Rivendell and Bree, and the scouring of the Shire, which was seen by the screenwriters as anticlimactic. Yes, I would agree with that. So there you go. They could have handed a lot more in, and so they kept it restrained. That's the thing with an adaptation. You are kind of limited by what you have, but you can still do your best. And I think that is definitely the case with this movie in particular. Like you said, Michael, hey, this was maybe hard to adapt in the sense of the pacing rather than making it its own standalone movie. Because of course it has a natural conclusion. Well, it has several natural conclusions, but it has a natural conclusion, unlike the Two Towers, where you kind of have to pick where you end it. We know where things end, but it's just how many endings do you want to include, and they clearly cut some. So I have sympathy for Peter Jackson, despite the criticisms he received for all the endings. Yeah. Anyway, Michael, shall we conclude? You go first.
Yeah. Let's not have this be a drawn-out conclusion. Overall, I mean, like I say, it's really difficult. These films are I've already mentioned they're kind of one cohesive thing, and I can't imagine anyone like having wildly variant opinions on the film. Like, it's almost impossible for me to imagine someone being like, "Oh, I love Fellowship and I love Return of the King, but I hate the middle one." It's like, I hate Two Towers. It's like, well, it's like basically the same story with the same characters and the same themes. So obviously, I think I've rated the other films around like the 9 territory, a 9 out of 10 kind of territory, because I think, it is the greatest trilogy ever. Obviously, usually kind of like the 9 and 10 things are reserved for kind of like artsy thematic films a lot of the time, but I think, and to be fair, we've mentioned how like the Academy hates like fantasy films. I think there is a reason for that, which is fantasy films tend to not be able to be as like kind of introspective and things like that. And I don't think this film is as introspective as like a deep drama like, I don't know, Moonlight or whatever. But it is really good. It's like basically the best that fantasy action adventure seems to be able to get, and that's why I kind of put it in the 9 territory. However, I did say I think it's slightly worse. I think it's the worst of the 3, and I do understand the benefits of it in terms of like it being climactic, but I also think when I look at it as a whole, I'm like, it's a little bit kind of not quite as exciting for me. Like, the individual moments are really exciting, but I look at it as a whole, and it's not quite as exciting because of the pacing. So for that, I'm going to put it as a low 9, but yeah, and I think the other 2 I gave I think I just said they were a middling 9. So yeah, low 9 from me.
Okay, well that's the thing. I'm going to change my ratings of the other 2 movies that I've seen, Michael, in this trilogy, because I gave The Fellowship of the Ring an 8 out of 10. I've moved it up to an 8.5, just from, I guess, more experience and rewatching these movies.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to give The Two Towers, which was initially for me an 8.5. It is now a good old 9 out of 10. And this for me, again, I think it is also a 9 out of 10 movie.
Yes.
Although I think I was tempted to give it a 9.5, but I'm like, nah, it can still be a 9 out of 10 and be my favourite movie. And it can be, I view it as good as The Two Towers, but this is my personal preference because of those great moments.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go, 9 out of 10. I mean, we've discussed how great an adaptation this was. The source material, of course, is great, but yeah, it's hard work to adapt it and make it, as good as it is. And you just have to look at the Amazon Prime series, or indeed The Hobbit, to show, it's not always the easiest thing adapting Tolkien's work, and Peter Jackson knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
So yeah, 9 out of 10 for Return of the King. And as a whole, I think the trilogy, if I had to give the trilogy a mark out of 10, it would also be a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'd agree. If I gave the whole trilogy a rating, it would be a 9.
Yeah, a 9 out of 10. Like, there are some quibbles here and there, and it's like, obviously it's incredible, but yeah, it's not absolutely perfect, I'd say. There are some things I think we've discussed in this review and throughout the other 2 reviews which stop it being a 10 out of 10. But that's the thing, we're having to justify why it's not a 10, and that shows you how good this trilogy is, and there may never ever be another trilogy like this, like this good. This, again, what can you compare this to? Certainly since these movies came out, the only thing that comes to mind is James Cameron's Avatar, in terms of the scale and the effort that was put into making these movies. And the epic, I guess, vision as well, which Peter Jackson had. And again, The Avengers does not come close. I'm sorry, it does not at all.
Yeah.
I that was like a managed thing where they kept saying, okay, how far can we go here? And eventually it built up to this point. This was a real vision from Peter Jackson. Yeah, that dragged this, or dragged is the wrong word, elevated this into one of the most spectacular cinematic achievements ever. So there you go. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. What are we doing next week, Mike?
Next week we're doing 2 films that somehow aren't going to match this film in terms of length, and those are The Waterboy and Radio.
That's true.
Is that because it's an Adam Sandler film coming out?
No. The Waterboy is because there might be... Actually, I think there is an Adam Sandler movie coming out soon, starring his daughter, by the way. A real Nepo baby film. But yeah, this is because of the start of the NFL season. So we're going to be doing 2 movies based on American football, Waterboy and Radio. Have you seen Radio, by the way? Do you know what it's about?
No, I haven't.
Well, don't look it up before you go in.
I'll go into it blind.
And then hopefully you'll see why I picked it. Anyway, like you said, Michael, we have been selecting and reflecting on Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, the conclusion to this epic trilogy that came out 20 years ago. Those were the days, That's when I read a review, was like, Roger Ebert was like, movies are so low effort nowadays, and it's good to see, Lord of the Rings, there's so much effort. It's great to see. I'm like, wow, it seems such a contrast to today. Like, these kind of movies, like, there seems to be so much more effort for big blockbusters back in the early 2000s compared to now. But yeah, anyway, join us next week for some more epic movies, Waterboy and Radio. Yeah, goodbye.
Good. Oh, I've been Michael.
Thanks for listening and goodbye.
Goodbye.